All right. So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's spooky webinar, How Count Dracula Uses JobsEQ. My name is Holden Andrews, and I will be the host for today. Our two speakers are Chmura's CEO and Chief Economist, Chris Chmura, and then our Senior Account Manager and Sales Lead, Wilson Cox. For those of you who may be new, and this is your first webinar, we like to usually just give a little "Who is Chmura" introduction so you can get to know more about us and what we do. So we provide labor market data and analysis. That way our clients can make informed decisions to help their communities grow and thrive. Chmura was founded in 1998 by Chris, and there are two offices, one in Richmond and the other in Cleveland. We are economists, data scientists, statisticians, business professionals who truly care about helping your community grow. And two things that drive us, and you'll see more here in a minute, are client satisfaction and success. And then excellence is our first priority, both in customer service and in data quality. So this slide kind of shows the four main ideas or pillars that guide us. So as you can see at the top, we have excellence. Next, we have thorough, accurate, and useful. And these four ideals are really what guide us as an organization. They're what drive us, and they're what we aspire to be. So one of the ways we try to really exemplify those values is through our weekly economic update report. So this is a report that we send out once a week with the most up-to-date national data. And if you're interested in getting on this email list, I will put a link in the chat here in a few minutes. So before I pass things off to Chris, I just want to mention that we are going to send the slides and recording out to all of the webinar attendees either Friday or Monday. And then if there are any questions that you have for me or Chris or Wilson as we kind of go through everything we're talking about today, feel free to put them into chat. And then we'll get around to answering those either at the end of each section or at the very end. So thank you all for joining. And with that, I will pass it off to Chris.
Great. Thanks, Holden. And here we are with this spooky webinar. And thankfully, at least the forecast is not looking as spooky as it had been over the past year. So things are looking better in the national economy. Sales have been very strong. GDP has been strong. It weakened a little bit in the third quarter. Those numbers came out this morning, but they still remain strong. Employment is lagging in some sectors, and I'll end with some charts and showing you some updated high-level sector charts in terms of how employment is doing in regards to getting back to the pre-COVID levels. The job market remains tight, and as we've gotten newer data, it has even remained tighter. And with work from home still in flux, it's not clear how that's going to, over the long term, affect the job market in terms of the office market. Then after that, Wilson will give you a case study with Count Dracula, which I'm sure you'll find to be very interesting. All right, first, the national overview. We're, believe it or not, almost 2 years into this COVID crisis. And if you've been at these webinars before, you know that around the globe, a recession is defined as 2 consecutive drops in GDP. GDP comes out quarterly, gross domestic product. But here in the US, we have the National Bureau of Economic Research, and within that group is a business cycle dating committee, and they look at a lot of different monthly data to determine when a recession has ended and when it begins. And here you can see 3 of the indicators that they look at. Non-farm employment, this gray shaded area, is the recession. The NBER declared the recession as just 2 months long. That is April and May. I'm sorry, March and April. And here you can see employment. When we went into the COVID crisis, we lost all the jobs that were created over the prior expansion. We've been coming out of that deep hole fairly quick, and you see over the last couple of months, the increase has slowed a bit, most probably because of the Delta variant. On the right-hand side, we're looking at consumption in red. That is consumer spending on goods and services. And that's very important because consumers make up about 70% of GDP. You can see it plummeted as we went into the COVID lockdown. when some of the states started to open up, we saw sales coming back. They spiked here during the summer when COVID was very low and have come down to more normal levels, like around 5% or so. In gray, though, is income. And you could see it spiked going into the recession, and that's because of the CARES Act, the stimulus, the increase in unemployment benefits, and then it came down and it spiked again 2 more times as we saw more stimulus and money going to households and then the higher unemployment benefits. On the bottom, industrial production, percent change from a year ago. And this is output from factories, from utilities, and from mining. And you could see the big drop off. And again, now the rebound, and now getting back to something a little bit more normal around change of up 4%, actually, in this case. Yes, up 4% from a year ago. So here you're now looking at GDP. So even though the recession only lasted 2 months, it straddled 2 quarters. So the recession lasted during the first and the second quarter. You see this big rebound here as we came out of the deep decline in spending. And now you're looking at numbers in the past year that have been up around 5%. The latest number that just came out this morning was 2%. Again, a decline in part due to some of the supply shortages, but also due to the Delta variant increasing as much as it did. And if you look at this relative decline, or this decline relative to the Great Recession, you can see it was not as long, but it was clearly much deeper than what we saw during the Great Recession. And here's our forecast for the next year or so. And we're looking at growth around 5%, between 4 and 5% over that time period. That's considered very strong. Typically around 2% is what employment growth, is what GDP growth typically is on a quarterly annualized basis. So going ahead for the next year or so, we're looking at strong growth, in part because of all the stimulus money that's in the economy, and also the Fed has been stimulative in its monetary policy. So some of the issues that we're facing right now is this labor market that's very hot, and it's at this time hard to fill positions, even though we had such a high double-digit unemployment rate during the recession. We're now looking at an unemployment rate that is slightly below 5%. And on this chart on the right-hand side, we're looking at the participation rate of the percentage of people that are either actively looking for work or are working in the economy. All these gray shaded areas are recessions. And here in the 1970s and 80s, you saw an increase in participation rate as the baby boomers were coming into the economy and more women were working. That topped out around 2000. And it's been coming down slightly, in part because of the baby boomers retiring. It plummeted here when we went through the COVID recession, and now it's back up a bit, but many observers don't think it's going to get back to the pre-COVID levels. And the reason for that is we're looking at some people that retired early because of COVID. There are some people that are still not going back for fear of contracting the virus. So once we get to a point where maybe in a year or so we're beyond that fear, we'll see this rising somewhat, especially through September. And these data here are through September. Some people were having to stay at home because they had children that were learning online. So we may see that inch up as we get into October and November. And then that federal unemployment insurance that was in addition to what the states were paying, that lasted through Labor Day. So with that additional funding off the unemployment insurance, that may cause some people to go back to work. So again, these are data through September. When we see October, we're expecting to see this inch up a bit faster than the slight increase we've been seeing the last couple months. But so now, on top of the fact that we've got businesses back to work, there's demand, consumers are spending more, so retailers and other firms are trying to add employees during this situation. We have another factor that's almost like a double whammy to these businesses, and that is people are quitting and going on and finding other jobs. Again, gray shaded areas are recessions. We only have this data back to 2000. And during a recession, it's not unusual if times are uncertain, you don't quit your job and take another job. because you don't know whether that other company you're going to is going to keep you over the long term. So again, this drops off during uncertain times, and then as the economy gets better, we see an uptick, more people quitting their jobs and going to other jobs. Here, a huge drop off that we saw during the COVID crisis, and then it started increasing, and now we're looking at a record level of the number of people quitting their jobs. August, here we saw 4.3 million quit in August, and that's a record 2.9% of employment. So again, a very hot labor market due to some underlying conditions and the strangeness of this COVID-19 recession and lockdown. Now going back to the employment data, and here we're looking at employment indexed to 100, and that's at pre-COVID, so fourth quarter of 2019. And here we did some analysis. On the right-hand side, you're looking at two-digit data. So manufacturing is at a high level, two-digit. But the analysis we did in terms of how quickly jobs fall off and how quickly they're going to come back, we did it at a four-digit level. So within manufacturing, we would look at shipbuilding as opposed to textile mills, as opposed to furniture manufacturing. And then we summed it up to get it back to this high level here. So again, since it's an index, the way to read it is that if we get down to 60, that means that this particular sector lost 40% of its jobs. So this sector is arts and entertainment, and the sector above it, accommodation and food service. No surprise, those saw large declines because it's hard to social distance. And then we have actual data through about this point. That's through September, and you could see it's coming back up, but where you haven't gotten back to the 100 line, which would be back to pre-COVID levels. Here, on the other hand, we're looking at food, agricultural food and fisheries, and it dropped off, not much, maybe 5% when COVID started, but then very quickly it got back up to pre-COVID levels, higher than pre-COVID levels, and now it's dropped off a bit over the last couple of quarters, and we're expecting it to be flat going forward. Now on this next slide, and the next couple, I start to peel away those extreme declines and increases so that you could see better how the other industries are performing. So here, mining, you could see dropped off about 20%, and it has stayed low. Much of that was due to the fact that people weren't driving. The price of gasoline went down during COVID, and we saw a drop off in terms. Even though the price of gasoline went down, people weren't driving, and so there was not as much demand for some oil and other items. But you see, it has started to come back up. This dark black line is education services. Again, you can see that it is starting to come back up, but again, it's not going to get to pre-COVID levels until even 2023 in terms of our forecast. The bright green line is other services. This is a grouping. By the way, the government has created these groupings, and they're called NAICS codes, North American Industry Classification Codes. And so other services are things like religious organizations, personal care, spas, for example, or auto repair, and some other sectors. And there, again, you could see that it is not at pre-COVID levels, and we have it getting to pre-COVID levels at the beginning of next year, and then continuing to show a little growth. On the top half, though, we're looking at public administration. So this is government, state, local, federal government. You could see that it actually increased a little bit going into COVID, went just slightly below the pre-COVID numbers, and then has been above the pre-COVID levels. We expect it to increase a bit more and then basically grow at a very slow rate. On this slide now at the bottom in red, you're seeing administrative and support and waste management remediation services. That's a mouthful. Employment services or temporary help is a big part of that. Services to buildings, landscaping, security are all contained in it. And again, you see the drop off not as great as we saw in some of the other, but still 15% or so decline. In green is retail trade. And so this one as well, down almost 15%. And then it rebounded rather quickly when we saw stores opening back up. Some of the states taking away the mandates to stay at home. But as we look forward, notice it's not getting to the pre-COVID, here's the 100 line. And in fact, as we go forward into the future, this is one sector that the federal government is forecasting to decline slightly in terms of employment going forward. Of course, different sectors or different stores within retail will be growing or contracting at different rates, but here we're looking at overall retail. And then the dark black line here is showing you transportation and warehousing. And again, it fell off only 5%, but with everyone, with many people at home not wanting to go to grocery stores, having things delivered, and the Amazon effect where we're seeing more deliveries, you can see that it climbed very quickly to get beyond the pre-COVID levels. And now we're looking at an increase of greater than 5% in terms of employment from pre-COVID levels. In some ways, you can say that some of this retail trade employment is switching over into trade, this wholesale trade that is transportation and warehousing. That is, if they have the skills to move from one sector to the other. And then on this final chart, real estate, we saw the drop off there of about 11-12% in terms of employment, and it is climbing. We expect it to be to pre-COVID levels the early next year. In blue is management of companies, so headquarters. Many of those people could work from home, so employment only dropped 6%, and now we're seeing it stay at about that level, and then we expect it to start to pick up and to grow, get to pre-COVID levels and continue to grow about the middle of next year. The purple is showing you healthcare. You see the drop off there, but again, moving back up and getting to pre-COVID levels early next year. And then healthcare is expected to be one of the fastest growing industries in the US over the next 10 years. In fact, the latest forecast that came out from the BLS has overall employment growing 0.7% over the 0.7%, I believe, over the next 10 years, healthcare growing twice that pace. And then the brown, finance and insurance, again, a very small drop off because much of that work could be done from home. And then we see that it's already above the pre-COVID levels. The hot real estate market is helping out here with mortgages being in strong demand. So with that, the overall U.S. economy, again, we're seeing some good rebounding. There are some who are looking for a good Christmas this year, holiday season. The National Retail Association just came out with their forecast this past week, and they are looking for record levels during this selling season. They look at November and December as the selling season, and they're looking for anything like 8.2%. Between 8.5 and 10.5 growth over last year, which would make it a record level. 8.2 was the record, and typically in the past 5 years, sales have grown only 4.4% from the previous Christmas. So if the supply chain doesn't mess us up, and if we don't have another spike in COVID, it's looking like we may have some very happy retailers this year. So with that, let me turn this over to Wilson, and I look forward to your questions at the end.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Can you hear me all right? And Holden, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you, Wilson.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Just let me know once you can see this JobsEQ All Tools page.
I can see it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending this fun and informative webinar this afternoon that we're hosting. So some of you might know me as your account manager or the person that does these fun holiday, type webinars. And I remember doing one last year with my coworker, Anthony Marquetta, who also works here. So today's theme is Count Dracula is looking to pick up a part-time gig and wants to find a job with his similar skills somewhere across the USA. So Count Dracula has been around for hundreds of years, as we know, and he only works probably about 31 days out of the year, so for pretty much the month of October. So he is looking to pick up some part-time work to keep himself busy, as well as max out his retirement fund since he will be retiring soon. He's not really sure what he wants to do, but he's got some ideas and he does have some skills and certifications, and he wants to look into occupations across the USA that have those same skills. It's been quite some time since Dracula graduated from college, and as everyone knows, he went to Transylvania University in Kentucky. He's got his degree in biology. So he has let me know that he would like an occupation in the health sciences or the healthcare industry. And just as Chris had mentioned during her presentation during the webinar, there's going to be a lot of growth and demand there. So after doing much research for this centuries-old vampire, I thought it would be best to start in the industry snapshot so we could take a look at which particular industry sector or healthcare industry nationwide that Dracula would be best suited for, and also one that has a lot of demand, of course. So this is the All Tools page that I have pulled up on the screen. So our software JobsEQ you can access on any standard web browser, and it's a software as a service. So here's all of our reports and tools and analytics categorized into different sections. So our users have access to off-the-shelf reports that you see right here on the left. Here's some of our big picture analytics that I'll be touching in today, like our job postings data and our mapping analytic. And then here's our demographic focused analytics, our industry focused analytics, as well as occupation and education focused analytics. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start with the industry snapshot and touch into this. This is one of our core analytics to the platform. Let's go ahead and take a look at the control panel on the far right. And what we're going to do is we're going to look nationwide. But of course, any user can look at data for their particular region, whether that's the state, a metro area, a combined statistical area, a county, city, even a zip code and a census block, since JobsEQ Pro has census block data now. And of course, you can also make custom regions. Here in the industry text box, we are interested in looking and just kind of maybe poking around at some of the healthcare industries nationwide. And let's go ahead and take the projection out the next 10 years, since that's probably when Dracula is looking to retire, but we're not really sure. He could also work for another century or two, but let's just take the projection out the next 10 years. And then for the next level, we'll go ahead and drop down to the 6-digit and click go. And now all of the industries that fall under healthcare for the US will appear. So on the far left of this table, we've got the NAICS codes. Here's the industry titles. So general medical and surgical hospitals is up at the top in terms of employment nationwide. Here we have offices of physicians, home healthcare services, and so on. And so on this table, we have three big headers up at the top. We've got a section for the current data. Here's the 5-year historical data, and then the 10-year forecast. And so we'll show employment here, wages, we'll show the total change over the last 5 years, and then of course the demand data, which we break out into exits, transfers, and the employment growth. So as I'm scrolling through, I'm just kind of looking at maybe some of these different industries. I'm sure that, Count Dracula could possibly work in a general medical or surgical hospital. Not really sure if I'd want him working in a child daycare, but we'll just keep looking here. So we've got dentist's office, we've got rehabilitation services, child and youth services, probably not a great fit for Count Dracula. Let's see, as I keep scrolling, I see kidney dialysis centers. Aha, so I actually see something that is sticking out. So blood and organ banks, pretty interesting healthcare industry right here. Seems like it might be a good fit for Count Dracula. We're showing 78,000 currently employed. Here's their average annual wage. And let's go over here to the 10-year forecast. So we actually take the total demand right here and then break it out into 3 columns. So exits are going to be the people typically leaving the workforce due to retirement over the next 10 years. So about 34,000 right there. 44,000 for transfers. Those are going to be people changing jobs from one industry to another, and certainly going to see some employment growth over the next 10 years of 23,000 new jobs. So we can dive a little bit deeper into the data. I mean, this seems like a pretty good fit at first for Count Dracula, but let's dive a little bit deeper. So you'll notice that in JobsEQ, you can click on any industry title and easily navigate around to other analytics. If we wanted to look at labor and wage trends data, we have that. Maybe you want to run a what if analysis to look at, like business retention and expansion. We could even pull a report. But what I want to highlight right here is the industry occupation mix. So what this shows is the occupational mix for this particular industry. And I know we are looking at this nationwide for our region over here in the control panel, but any user could look at this for their particular county or their service region or any other way like that. So what we're looking at are blood and organ banks nationwide. And here's all the occupations that make up blood and organ banks. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. We see a lot of nursing positions, medical assistants, personal care aides, even like office clerks or, accountants and auditors and receptionists will make up this industry nationwide. But there is certainly one occupation up at the top that I think might be a good fit for Count Dracula, and that is phlebotomists. Since he has a skill with drawing blood. So this looks like a good fit. We've got current employed right now in the nation for this particular blood and organ banks industry at about 11,000 or a little over. Here's some average wage data right here, and then the 1-year demand. But of course, any user could also change the numbers over here, maybe look out the next 10 years, and now we'll show all of the 10-year demand right there with exits, transfers, employment growth, and of course, the total demand. So phlebotomists also work in a lot of other healthcare industries, so you could even change your distribution type to see what other industries they work in. But let's dive a little bit deeper into phlebotomists. So just like we clicked on the blood and organ banks industry title, you can also just click right here on the occupation title and navigate around to other analytics. We could look at wage information. We could map out where phlebotomists live or where they work. We could even pull a report or look at a skills gap. But one thing I want to show and highlight is this occupation profile. So what JobsEQ has is we have background information on all of the 800 plus different SOC codes and occupations in the platform. So you'll notice here, we have the title up at the top. Here's a brief description, draw blood for tests, transfusions, donations, and research. I mean, that right there seems like a good fit, but we're going to look into other skills that Count Dracula has, and of course, some of the real-time skills that these employers are looking for when you hop into the job postings data. Here we show some different tabs up at the top as well. So under the training tab, what we can show here is education and training requirements. And then right below that, we also show the educational attainment profile. So, there's a large portion of phlebotomists nationwide that have a bachelor's degree, as well as an associate's degree. And then, of course, some college no degree, which is anything less than an associate's, probably like a certificate. And then, of course, we also have some IPEDS data here or post-secondary completions. Here's all the colleges and universities in the United States that have some sort of program that is linked to phlebotomists. The next tab over is we have a ton of wage data in the platform, whether that's pulled from the OES or from real-time wage data. But here we'll show the mean entry level and experienced wages, as well as other industries that Count Dracula can compare himself to. So if he wants to work in a hospital or a physician's office, you always have those comparisons right below. Another thing that we have in the occupation profile is attributes. So these are all the 120 knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for success within the job. And this is the latest ONET data that we have. And then the last tab that we have is apprenticeships. So this would typically appear for like welders, carpenters, and it would include the Rapids code and Rapids title. But all of this data is super important to have since it's background information for this occupation. And what we could do is simply download this as an Excel spreadsheet, Word document, and PDF report, and send it on to Count Dracula so he could have access to that. Other things that we can take a look at, if we click on the title again, I had mentioned that you can navigate around to other analytics in the platform. One thing that I think shows really well is our mapping analytics. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on Maps. And what this is going to do is map out occupation concentration by place of work for phlebotomists nationwide. So this is showing you all the counties in the USA where phlebotomists are currently working. So basically, this is where all the jobs are located. So this maps analytic is super powerful. It's pretty much 100% customizable, and it is an Esri-based map. There's a lot that you can do here in terms of layering, base maps. I'll go ahead and show some of the different data sets that we can map out here. So if I click the plus button, we have demographics that we can map out. We have several dozen different demographics that you can map out down to the county or zip code level. A lot of this is pulled from census or the ACS. We can also map out industries, occupations, commuting to and from a region, percent change in employment, unemployment information, rural scale, awards data. So we could map out Transylvania University's post-secondary completions, as well as GDP and online job ads. So there's a lot that you can do here within this one particular tool in the platform. Of course, we also have a layering function. So if we needed to show, Count Dracula where all the airports were, or maybe counties or highways or something like that, we even have opportunity zones and all of the colleges and universities already loaded right here into the tool. So if we wanted to show, just for this example, like international airports and click OK, now you'll notice that a small little airplane icon will appear on the map showing you where all those are plotted out. Again, this might help with Count Dracula as he's traveling around the United States. So we do have that function, as well as the base map. We can always change it to a Google Earth image, a dark gray map, or a street map, or a street map at night. So we do have that in the platform right here as well. Not only can we add those kind of customization features to our Maps analytic, you can also click the cog wheel next to the data set that you have. And then what you can do here is change the title of your map. You can change the layer intensity. We could even make it a heat map for Count Dracula if he's into that. What I'll do is go ahead and just kind of shorten the title real quick. And another really cool feature that we have, if certain JobsEQ users want to download this map and maybe put it into a report and kind of match their color theme, we can always change the colors as well, which is a nice little feature to have. I'm sure, as we all know, Count Dracula's favorite color is probably going to be red. So let's go ahead and choose that. We'll ramp all the queries, and now the whole US will appear with that red color scheme. So, as we're looking nationwide here to see where phlebotomists are working, this is basically showing you, again, like I had mentioned, where all the jobs are located. So you'll see a pretty large concentration of phlebotomists working up here in the Northeast, as well as down here in like Southern California, or even the San Francisco Bay Area, or even right down here into Florida. What he could do is he could come and travel to Florida, finish out his work years, and then retire. But I'm not really sure if he'd want to retire to Florida, since he doesn't have the complexion for that Florida sun as we all know it. But a really, really interesting tool that we have here in JobsEQ is our mapping analytic, and all of this is downloadable either as an image, or you can take all the raw data with you. Let me hop back out of the Maps tool real quick, because the big thing that I want to show today is real-time demand for phlebotomists. What the hiring trends look like nationwide. Maybe we can see what are some of the skills that these employers are, listing in the job ads, and, matching up with those certain skills and certifications that, Count Dracula has over all the hundreds of years that he's been a vampire. So if we click right here into Real-Time Intelligence, or RTI, this is one of my favorite tools to the platform. It does a really great job showing you the real-time demand for your region, and we can take this all the way down to the county level. So here nationwide, what we have is 9.4 million job ads that we have, and we pull in from about 30 to 40,000 different sources depending on the day of the week. Right over here in the control panel, you can also select your occupation display level. You can set your time frame. We update all these job ads every single day, so you could look at active only. I'm going to go ahead and take it to the last 6 months, because what I want to show Count Dracula are some of the hiring trends, maybe over the past 6, or we could even look at 12 months if we wanted to as well. What you'll also notice here is we have a column for real-time wage data. I'm going to go ahead and click to add that in there so you can see it as an annual or an hourly wage. We also have additional columns for the number of days that the job ad's been out, or the duration. So kind of like a benchmark as to maybe how hard that job is to fill. We also have ads closed, or the job posting's location quotient. So the first thing that I want to do here, again, is to look at phlebotomists. So you can add in a filter for pretty much any of the categories that you see listed over here on the left. So what I'll do is, let's go ahead and add an occupation filter for phlebotomists. And then now we'll drill from, what was that, about 9 million job ads down to 47,000 nationwide. And so what we'll show here are, the 47,000 different ads. So there's the occupation we had selected. Here's top locations right now across the country. So Phoenix, Houston, Tulsa, Salt Lake City, even Birmingham and Cleveland. Right below that, we've got the top employers that I'm sure all of us are familiar with, like LabCorp, Quest Diagnostics, Grifols, even Aerotech, since we do pull in from staffing companies. But users can also select whether or not they want to see job ads from staffing companies or non-staffing companies or all of them. Right below that, we've got certifications data. So here's the top 10 certifications for phlebotomists nationwide. So we're showing, basic life support, the National Phlebotomy Association certified phlebotomist, CPT, CPR. So all of those are listed there. But keep in mind, we've got 66 that we've pulled in out of 47,000 job ads. Here's some of the hard skills data that we're showing, as well as soft skills. And then we can even do a search by job title, which is great. So if you want to look at part-time, full-time, you could filter that way. You could look at any sort of job title. And then what we'll do is kind of a crosswalk back to the occupation for something along the lines of like cybersecurity or project manager, that sort of thing. Here's the education levels listed. So everything from high school diploma up to an associate's or bachelor's degree, or even if it's unspecified in the ad. Here's the program. So like I had mentioned, he got his biology degree from Transylvania University. So we show that as a top 4 program here nationwide with 101 ads where that's listed. And then we also show the job type. So whether it's a full-time job, part-time, permanent, temporary, or temp to hire. So like I had mentioned, you can add filters. So I've already added one filter in for phlebotomists. Maybe what we want to do is start going through and adding in filters for the certain certifications and skills that we think, or that I know since I've spoken with Count Dracula, that he actually has right now. So let me go down to the certifications. I know for a fact that he has his basic life support and his CPR certification. What you can do is now add those to the filters by simply just click those check boxes, or again, you could come over here and click the plus add filter button and type them in that way. So now we're drilling down to just 3,600 job ads. We're also showing more certifications there, but let's get into some of the skills data. So, Count Dracula being a, centuries old vampire, worked for hundreds of years, he's got definitely some medical terminology as one of his skills. I'm assuming that he can type on a keyboard. So we could add that in, but just to play it safe, I'll maybe look at just medical terminology for this one, as well as the soft skills that you see here. So we always have those listed. And then of course, the last thing that I wanted to add to our filters is he is really looking for a part-time gig. So if I come down here and look at job types, let's go ahead and take a look at part-time, as well as maybe just unspecified, maybe if it wasn't listed in the ad, and now we can add those to the filters as well. So let's actually scroll back up to the top now, and we'll see that all of this data is now updated. Oops, I forgot to add in medical terminology. Let me go ahead and click and add that into the filter. So, starting at 9.4 million job ads, any user can easily now filter and search down to, very specific postings, whether they're an economic or a workforce developer, or they're working within an educational institution, and you want to, show this data to show what the hiring trends look like, what employers are posting job ads out. So we were pretty quickly and easily able to drill down to just a little over 100 different job ads. And so, it's a really powerful tool that we have right here. And I think it will certainly help Count Dracula or any other job seeker to kind of look at the hiring landscape for their region. Or of course, they could also look nationwide or for their state. So, let me hop back out to the all tools page real quick. There's a lot of different tools and reports and analytics here that you can use for the different research or planning that you're doing. I think now we have a pretty good chance at getting Count Dracula a job as a phlebotomist. We could spend a lot of time in here pulling more data. I certainly hope that this Halloween webinar was fun yet informative for all that attend. Holden, what I'll go ahead and do is just pass it over to you. I can keep sharing my screen if we've got questions. But yeah, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Holden.
Sure. Yeah, Wilson, keep your screen shared. To our wonderful attendees, if there are any questions that y'all have, please direct them to the chat. Chris, Wilson, and I will be, here for the next few minutes just to answer any questions that might come up. And if there aren't any, have a happy Halloween and a great rest of your day. So thank you.
Looks like you covered everything, Wilson. So Holden, Wilson, thank you very much. And for our audience, thank you. And as Holden said, please have a happy and safe Halloween, and get out and spend some money to keep this economy going?
So Chris, we have a handful of questions coming in. First is one from Monica Broomer. How much do you see the forecast changing with the new infrastructure bill? So we can start there.
I haven't seen if it's passed yet. In terms of our forecast, we assumed that the infrastructure bill does pass, and that is the smaller infrastructure bills, and not the bigger one that we might see passed later. So the other thing about that infrastructure bill, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not going to be spent all in the next year. It's going to take quite a while over the next 5 years and even longer than that before that spending is done. So the impact won't be as great on the economy. And then Chuck asked, can you comment on the notes that came over the past few days regarding online job ads? Wilson, I wonder if you could address that one.
Yeah, I just saw that, Chris. Hey, Chuck. I know Chuck Peterson. So commenting on the notes that came out over the past few days regarding online job ads. So I know we have a new kind of update coming to RTI. Chuck, could you maybe explain a little bit further on like the notes regarding the online job ads, or like maybe are you asking about like how frequently they get updated? Because I mean, I think, Holden, did we go ahead and inform the users that have access to JobsEQ about the new RTI updates coming?
I don't think we have yet.
Okay, gotcha. So that should be coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
But Chuck, I can always get with you after we hop off this presentation since I have your contact info.
And then so while we wait to see if Chuck puts anything else in the chat, Chris Wilson, there is a question from Colleen Jeeves. Do other issues such as the backload in the port factor in?
Yes. I was surprised that the National Retail Association has such a strong forecast. They did say, yeah, they used that as a caveat. Some of the retailers, though, the larger ones, are trying to get enough inventory so that there aren't problems. So a couple of things that may be a problem. We've already, when they forecast Christmas sales, it's for November and December, but there's already been a lot of publicity about potential shortages. So we may have seen some pickup in October. Once those retail numbers come out for October, it's going to be interesting to see if they're sharp. And then the second thing is, yes, we could have, I think we could have slower growth because of the shipments not coming in. But the one thing I would expect to really see is having the highest, if we do have shortages, you're going to see a lot of people buying gift cards. And those gift cards are collected in the data when they're purchased, not when the money is actually, not when the gift card is spent. So that could take the place of some of those shortages in terms of getting the revenue to the retailers within the holiday selling season. I think Chuck had some explanation here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just saw Chuck's message. Let me pull back up the message that he said. So I did send out like a monthly touch point email to the clients that I have, and it was, one of them was about double counting in the ads. And how they use this in what he's asking or saying is that we use this info frequently, and we want to assure that companies we share the data with, that it represents the demand for that occupation in the region. What I'm trying to do now is just pull up an email that I sent out, which refers to a blog that we did recently, and I know Greg Chmura did it, if I'm not mistaken. So this was something that you can access on our website. So yeah, Greg Chmura wrote an interesting blog on RTI metrics that here at Chmura we recommend you avoid, which is total ad counts. Keep in mind, within RTI though, there is a deduplication method, so we do deduplicate the jobs and make sure that we provide and show the ad that has the most data and information. You can read about this blog on our website, but if we need to throw that link out after this webinar, put it in the chat, we can certainly do that. So this was probably the the blog that he was referencing, if I'm not mistaken.
And Wilson, one more question for you from Monica. How do I find renewable hydrogen gas job information? related to the energy generation?
Yeah, that is a great question. So if you've got a particular industry in mind, we do have a lot of updates coming to RTI, and I know one of them on our roadmap is to be able to search by NAICS code, if I'm not mistaken. But what I would do is, if you've got an industry in mind, I would come to maybe the industry occupation mix for your region, and even if it's a custom region, pull the occupations that fall under that renewable. I think she said it was renewable gas or something like that. Pull the occupations, create a group, and then you could run that within RTI. So you could always use a custom occupation group in the platform, especially that analytic.
And Monica, if you want someone to walk through that with you, call your account manager or follow up with either Wilson or myself here.
Yep,
after.
definitely. Yeah, we can certainly address that. And there's another really interesting way that you could look at that too, Monica. So if I go back into RTI real fast, we do have a particular search function where you can do like a keyword filter search. So if I come down here to keyword filter, what we could search for, again, this is across the whole USA, we could just type in maybe the words renewable hydrogen gas or something along those lines. And that might also kind of help you with your research. So if I type in, let's see, renewable hydrogen, I can spell. There we go. Actually, I think I can. Nope. There we go. Nope. I still misspelled it. There we go. Renewable hydrogen. Now, I'm not seeing any right now, but let me remove the quotes. There's certainly some workarounds that we could do for this. Okay, so now we're actually pulling 581 job ads where those two words are mentioned somewhere in the posting. And so now we'll show energy engineers, electrical engineers, fuel cell engineers. So that's probably another way that I would do it as well. But of course, you could always do the industry occupation mix method as well.
Out of interest, Wilson, where are the locations? If you could scroll down just a bit more.
Yeah, let me go down to the 289 locations. So San Jose, Houston, Delaware, LA. Those are starting to appear here.
Okay, it seems like that may be it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you again, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great Halloween weekend.